Hey, good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday morning to you, and welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. We're continuing our study this morning of the Olivet Discourse, and we're focused for the moment on the Great Tribulation of Matthew chapter 24. Remember that Jesus said in Matthew 24 and verse 15 and following, "When you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, let the one who reads understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee. Pray that your flight will not be on the Sabbath. Pray that your women will not be with child. Pray that they're not nursing. Let those who are on the housetops not come down. For then shall be great tribulation, such as has never been." Now remember, he's talking about Daniel. When you see the abomination spoken of by Daniel, flee, because then will be great tribulation. That puts the great tribulation in their generation. So I've been focusing and I've been sharing with you the connection, the prophetic connection between the great tribulation and the time of the judgment on Israel and Jerusalem. That connection is extremely powerful. And let me remind you that I discussed this connection in depth in this book, The Resurrection of Daniel, chapter 12 and verse 2, Fulfilled or Future. I have an entire section, an entire chapter devoted to showing the direct connection between the Great Tribulation and the resurrection. I've shared with you how in the Jewish eschatological narrative, in their timeline of the last days, the Great Tribulation would come immediately before the coming of the Lord, the judgment, and the resurrection. So this is not some conjured up concept. It was the Jewish narrative, and it was the Old Testament narrative as well as the New. And in this book, once again, I show passage after passage from the Old Testament that talks about the connection between the tribulation and the resurrection in the New Testament as well. I mean, this connection is everywhere. Now, what that means is, for my amillennial and postmillennial friends, when they admit and agree that the Great Tribulation occurred in the first century in connection with the fall of Jerusalem, men such as Kenneth Gentry, Gary DeMar, Joel McDermott, James Jordan, Keith Matheson, on and on the list could go. They all affirm that the Great Tribulation was in the first century. But then they want to put the resurrection of Daniel chapter 12 and verse 2, at least some of them do. Kenneth Gentry, as I pointed out yesterday, has radically changed his view. He once took Daniel chapter 12 verse 2 as the end of time. Now he applies it to AD 70. The point being here that many of these men, again, Kenneth Gentry among them, he tries to divide the Olivet Discourse. He says the Great Tribulation was in the first century. But Matthew chapter 25, 36 and following is talking about the second coming of Christ at the end of human history. No, if the connection between the Great Tribulation and the resurrection is established and firm and true, and it is, then that means that since the Great Tribulation was to be in the first century, that means the resurrection was to be in the first century, and the futurism of the amillennial school, the postmillennial school, the premillennial school is wrong. Flat, dead wrong. Daniel chapter 12 confirms this. And as I've shared with you, in formal public debates, several debates, in which I've appealed to Daniel chapter 12. I remember one debate that I had when I appealed to Daniel chapter 12 and did an exegetical survey of the text. You could see on the face of my opponents that they had no idea what Daniel chapter 12 said. And so for that debate and a following debate, they completely and totally ignored the argument. As I pointed out in a previous video, David Hester, when I debated him here in Ardmore, David Hester changed his position 3 times on Daniel chapter 12 during the debate. Now that lets you know that these men know they cannot sustain their futurism by an honest examination of the text. Now, in Daniel chapter 12, we have the time of the Great Tribulation joined by the use of the connecting particle and, as Sam Frost points out, with the use of wa in the Hebrew and kai in the Greek. Verse 2 is connected with verse 1. Now, watch this. Verse 3, those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the firmament, those who turn many to righteous like the stars forever and ever. Now, mind you, this is the time of the resurrection. Well, if the time of the resurrection is the end of human history, and it's the end of any need for conversions, for preaching of the gospel, then that verse makes no sense, does it? Because at the time of the resurrection, there will be those who turn many to righteousness. That's evangelism after the resurrection. Verse 4, but you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Many will run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. Then I, Daniel, looked, and there stood 2 others, one on this riverbank and the other on that riverbank. And one said to the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, how long shall the fulfillment of these wonders be? I would just simply point this out in passing, that the wa in the Hebrew and the kai in the Greek of verse 6 absolutely connects it to the previous verse, doesn't it? It does, doesn't it? And it does in verse 2 as well. It connects it to the previous verse. Okay. Verse 6 again. And one said to the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, how long shall the shall the fulfillment pardon me. How long shall the fulfillment of these wonders be? What is the angel asking about? Oh, well, let's see. The time of the Great Tribulation. Let's see. The resurrection. Let's see here. Verse 3. Those who are wise shining like stars in the firmament. Number 4. The time of the end. You reckon that's what the angel was talking about? How long shall the fulfillment of these wonders be? Then I heard the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand to heaven, and swore by him who lives forever, that it shall be for a time, times, and a half time. And when the power of the holy people has been completely shattered, a few of these things will be fulfilled. I hope you were reading along. Well, let's read it again. And when the power of the holy people has been completely shattered, some of these things will be fulfilled. What? Some? Few? A little bit? Not all? No. And so, when we come to the commentators, for instance, Sam Frost, who says that verse 1 is the time of Antiochus Epiphanes, verse 2 is the end of time, then we have to ponder. Number 1 was the angel asking about all of the previous wonders, and, let me see here, would the resurrection be a wonder? Jesus called it a wonder in John 5, 25 to 29, connecting John 5 with Daniel chapter 12. So the angel was asking about, when shall these wonders be? In order to get the resurrection out of that angel's question, you have to say it's not a wonder. I'm sorry, contextually and grammatically, it just doesn't work. The answer, heaven's answer, affirmed by an angel standing on the land and on the sea, lifting his hands and swearing by the one who lives forever and ever. All, A-L-L, all of these things. Now, what's the antecedent to these things? These wonders. What's the antecedent to these wonders? Great tribulation, resurrection, time of the end, righteous shining forth in the kingdom. All of these things will be fulfilled. You know, it's absolutely fascinating to me that N.T. Wright, in his massive book on the resurrection, totally 100% ignores Daniel 12, verse 7. And most commentators do. But verse 7 won't go away. In tomorrow's video, I'm going to look at it a little bit closer, define it a little bit tighter, and to show once again that the connection between the time of the Great Tribulation and the resurrection cannot be broken, and that it was to be fulfilled when the power of the holy people was completely shattered. Sorry, folks. Futurism is false. Thanks for joining me for this morning's Morning Musings. Don't forget, get yourself a copy of my book. Go to my website, donkpreston.com, bibleprophecy.com. Order the book. Be sure to send me a note saying you saw the offer on YouTube or Facebook, and I'll refund your shipping. All right. I'll see you on the flip side.